My parents were two wonderful, loving people. My dad, who was Nathan Kaufman, no middle name, was born on May 15th, 1903 in Warsaw, Poland. My Aunt Anne fixed up my dad, who was a real handsome, sharp guy, had his own business and was doing well in Shelbyville, and so she fixed my dad up with her niece, who was my mother. Her name was Hortense. She was born on November 22nd, 1916. My dad being born in 1903 and my mother in 1916, there was 13 years difference. That made for a different dynamic in the family. Judy and I are equal and have been equal in our relationship for 50 years. That wasn't the case with my parents. My father kind of ruled the roost. He was the one that would discipline me. We would wait till Dad gets home. So when I was especially egregious in my behavior, my dad would take out a belt, a leather strap, and he'd give me a couple of whacks across the rear end, which I never did to any of you kids. But back then, that was not uncommon, and so it was always thought that my father was the kind of the ultimate ruler of the roost. My father played poker on Monday nights. He'd play at the Elks Club, and he'd always share his winnings with us. On Tuesday morning, there'd be $2 for me, and he'd leave my mother $20. Even when he didn't win, he'd put money on it like he did win, because he couldn't have won every time, but he always gave us money on Tuesday. My mother was an incredible person in the fact that she was a Renaissance woman in every respect. She loved the ballet and she loved the symphony. But in our house, she'd listen to baseball games frequently in the summer. She loved basketball. She would go to all the games with my dad and was a fan and had lots of strong opinions. She was an amazing cook. My mother made fabulous, and she was a gourmet cook. Her chocolate cake is legendary. Her sour cream coffee cake, her brownie pie. When she would have parties, she did all the cooking herself. There was never caterers in our house. In the summer, she'd have 150 people use the backyard, and she'd be cooking for weeks. My dad had a nickname for everybody. I was Butch, and my mother was called Toots. Never heard him refer to her as Horty. And she never referred to him as Nate. She referred to him as Darling. She always told the story that he was, of course, he'd refereed high school and college basketball. In 1937, he's refereeing the state finals. And as happens a lot of times with officials who are well known, there are people in the crowd that remember when he refereed a game that their team lost. So my dad walks on the floor, and this guy sitting directly in front of my mother, this is the first time my mother had been to a game to see my dad referee state finals. And of course, that's when it's a big thing, 14,000 people screaming and everything. And my dad goes out to start the game, and he throws up the ball, and this guy starts yelling at my dad. "Kaufman, you are blind. You are the dumbest SOB. I can't believe we got you again. We got no chance. You screwed us." And finally, after about the first quarter, my mother tapped him on the back and says, "I want to tell you something about Nate Kaufman. I happen to love the guy. I'm going to marry him next month. Now, why don't you shut up?" And the guy never said a word the rest of the day. I got married on April 11th, I think, in 1937. 11 months later, my sister Sue Ellen was born. And then 3 years after that, I was born. March 28th, 1941.